Have you ever looked at someone and felt an instant, unexplainable connection? For me and my sister Sarah, that connection was something we always took for granted. We're identical twins, so close that sometimes it feels like we share the same thoughts. We finished each other's sentences, knew what the other was feeling without a word, and shared everything. Or so I thought. Our bond was the one constant in my life, the one thing I believed was unbreakable. But a single text message, a simple string of words on a glowing screen, was about to shatter that belief and reveal a secret that had been hiding in plain sight our entire lives. It all started on a Tuesday, a completely ordinary day. I was at home, tidying up after a long day at work, when my husband, Mark, left his phone on the kitchen counter while he went to take a shower. Normally, I wouldn't even glance at it. We trusted each other completely. Mark was my rock, the love of my life. We had been married for 5 years, and they were the happiest years I'd ever known. But then his phone buzzed. A notification lit up the screen. It was a message from a name I didn't recognize, but the preview was what made my heart stop. It read, "Can't stop thinking about last night. You were amazing." My first reaction was disbelief. This had to be a mistake, a wrong number, spam, anything but what it looked like. My hands were shaking as I picked up the phone. I told myself I shouldn't look, that it was an invasion of privacy. But a cold, creeping dread was already wrapping itself around my heart. I had to know. With a deep breath, I unlocked his phone. I knew his passcode. He knew mine. We had no secrets, and opened the message thread. The conversation that unfolded on the screen was a nightmare. It was a long thread filled with intimate messages, plans for secret meets, and declarations of love. It was a full-blown affair. The blood drained from my face, and the room started to spin. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Who was this person? How could Mark, my Mark, do this to me? To us? I scrolled up, desperately searching for a name, a clue, anything to make sense of the betrayal. And then I saw it, a profile picture. A picture of a smiling woman who looked familiar, too familiar. It was my sister Sarah. I dropped the phone as if it had burned my hand. It clattered on the floor, the sound echoing in the sudden, deafening silence of the kitchen. No, it couldn't be. My mind raced, trying to find any other explanation. Maybe it was an old photo. Maybe someone was using her picture. But the messages were recent, from just the night before. The nickname he used for her, the little inside jokes, they were all things I recognized. It was her. My twin sister, the other half of my soul, was sleeping with my husband. The sound of the shower turning off upstairs jolted me back to reality. Mark would be down any minute. I quickly picked up the phone, placed it back on the counter exactly where it was, and fled to the living room, my body trembling uncontrollably. I sank onto the sofa, trying to muffle my sobs into a cushion. How long had this been going on? How could they do this? Every shared glance, every inside joke between them that I'd witnessed now took on a sinister new meaning. The times Sarah would spontaneously drop by when Mark was home. The way they'd laugh a little too long at something that wasn't that funny. I had seen it all, but I had been blind to it, willfully ignorant because the truth was too monstrous to even consider. When Mark came downstairs, dressed in his pajamas and smiling, I felt a wave of nausea.
He came over to kiss me, and I flinched. He looked concerned. "Everything okay, honey?"
he asked, his voice laced with the fake sincerity that now made my skin crawl. I couldn't look at him. I just mumbled that I had a headache and was going to bed early. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I couldn't confront them without proof, without knowing the full extent of their betrayal. The next few days were torture. I lived in a fog of pain and paranoia, pretending everything was normal while my world was falling apart. I watched them, Mark and Sarah, with new eyes. Their secret was like a flashing neon sign that only I could see. The hardest part was facing Sarah. She called me the next day, her voice cheerful and light, asking if I wanted to go shopping. "We haven't had a sister's day in forever," she chirped. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I agreed, my voice tight, my heart pounding. I needed to see her, to look her in the eye and search for any sign of guilt. We met at the mall, and she greeted me with a big hug. It took every ounce of my willpower not to push her away. As we walked through the stores, she chatted away about her life, her work, her dating woes. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. She complained about not being able to find a good man, all while she was sleeping with mine. During lunch, I decided to test the waters. I casually mentioned that Mark had been acting a little distant lately. I watched her face for a reaction. For a split second, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes before she masked it with a look of sisterly concern. "Really?" she said, her voice a little too high. "Maybe he's just stressed from work? You know how he gets." She placed her hand over mine. "You two are solid. Don't worry." Her touch felt like a brand. That was all the confirmation I needed. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was a calculated, cold-hearted deception from the two people I trusted most. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of their messages, of Sarah's face, of Mark's smile played on a loop in my head. I realized I couldn't live like this, in this prison of lies. I deserved the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next day, I called Sarah and asked her to come over. I told her I needed to talk to her about something important. I also sent a text to Mark, telling him to come home from work early, saying it was an emergency. I was setting the stage. There would be no more hiding. Sarah arrived first, looking worried. "What's wrong?" "You sounded so serious on the phone," she said as she walked in. I led her to the living room and told her to sit down. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "I know, Sarah," I said, my gaze fixed on hers. Her face went pale. "Know what? I don't understand." But her eyes told a different story. They were wide with fear. "You and Mark," I said, the words tasting like poison. "I know about the affair." Just then, the front door opened and Mark walked in. He saw the look on my face, then glanced at Sarah, who was frozen in her seat. The color drained from his face. The silence in the room was suffocating. Finally, Sarah broke it, her voice a choked whisper. "How did you find out?" There was no denial, no excuse, just a confession in the form of a question. The dam inside me broke. The pain, the anger, the sense of betrayal I had been holding back for days erupted. "How could you?" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. "You, my sister!" "And you," I turned to Mark, "the man I promised to spend my life with. How could you do this to me?" What followed was a storm of accusations, tearful confessions, and pathetic excuses. Mark tried to claim it just happened, that their connection was too strong to ignore, Sarah cried, saying she never meant to hurt me, that she was lonely, and he was there. Their words were just noise. They were excuses for a profound betrayal that had shattered my life. They talked about a special connection, the same kind of connection I thought I had with my own twin sister. They had twisted something beautiful into something ugly and deceitful. In that moment, looking at the two of them, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The pain was immense, but underneath it a new strength was forming. I realized I was mourning the loss of two relationships, the one with my husband and, more painfully, the one with my sister. The bond I thought was unbreakable had been a lie. I looked at Sarah, my mirror image, and for the first time I saw a stranger. I told them both to get out of my house. I didn't want to hear any more apologies or explanations. The trust was gone, and it was irreparable. The days and weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I filed for divorce. I cut off all contact with Sarah. The silence in my house was deafening, a constant reminder of what I had lost. There were times when the loneliness was overwhelming, when I would pick up my phone to call Sarah out of habit, only to remember why I couldn't. I was grieving the loss of my family, the future I thought I had. But with time, something shifted. The pain began to subside, replaced by a quiet resilience. I started rediscovering who I was without them. I was not just a wife or a twin. I was a person on my own, and I was stronger than I ever thought possible. This experience taught me a devastating but valuable lesson. Sometimes the people closest to you can cause the most harm. And while trust, once broken, may never be fully restored, the ability to trust yourself is something no one can ever take away. It's a long road, but I'm walking it one step at a time, rebuilding my life from the ashes of their betrayal. And I know, deep down, that I will be okay. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been through something similar, know that you are not alone and that healing is possible. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories.